Would you pray with me? Gracious and loving God, help us to understand and celebrate your dream for the world, to be transformed in Jesus' love, and to use our gifts to make a difference for others. Amen. As we continue to journey with the Israelites in our recounting of the Exodus, I want us to pause just for a moment. I know this is the defining story and the identity of ancient Israel, but I'm not sure that this epic story of liberation applies to many of us now. True, there are personal and individual themes we can get inspired by, but this communal journey of 40 years in the desert may not actually be for some of us to hold. It's complicated. Now that Christianity is a mainstream religion and Christians are minimally persecuted in our country, this new status distances us greatly from the first chosen people of God. Like in today's gospel, I would imagine that many of us relate with the first workers who earned their daily wage, yet saw others and what they earned and immediately compared themselves to them and demanded more. I don't think we're greedy or unkind. I think we're human. And I think that we struggle with valuing meritocracy over equity. I think we struggle with understanding what actual justice is. It's complicated. We have gotten used to what brings us comfort or what we should expect. And God continues to interrupt what we know by reintroducing us to what is right and what is just. Just because it's something we know doesn't mean it's right. And just because it's something we're used to doesn't mean we need it. Perhaps our sense of justice and our sense of peace are different from God's sense of justice and peace. There's a song I want to share with you. It is God's will that every need be supplied. You are important to me. I need you to survive. It is God's will. What a great statement. Both of today's lessons point to understanding that mystery of God. It is God's will to instruct the Israelites as they make their sojourn towards liberation. It is God's will to meet their needs, supply them with patient leaders, and give them extra portions once they have drawn near and trusted God. According to Jesus, it is God's will to be generous with every person, no matter when or how they draw near to God. So what is God's justice, if it is different from our own? God's justice is about putting right all that has been made wrong in creation. It's about mending all that has been broken by sin. God's justice is active. God's justice does. It means struggling against injustice. It means accompanying a people from one place of enslavement to freedom. It means listening to their cries and their complaints and providing better water. It means making a way when there isn't a way and splitting the sea in two. It means listening again and again and giving them what they need, perhaps in that moment of ridiculous vulnerability, what they want. They want some bread, something that they're used to. It's been so long, and God gifts them this new experience of manna every day, and will double the portion after 6 days. God's justice's goal is for a world of righteousness. You see, in both Hebrew and Greek, righteousness and justice are the same word. It describes a state of right relationship between God and people, God in creation, people in creation, all of those dimensions, God, people, and creation in right relationship. So where does this leave us? If we are not actually the formerly enslaved people in ancient Egypt triumphantly journeying towards freedom, can we still draw near to God? How does God operate for your average, everyday Egyptian citizen who may or may not agree to the policies and practices of Pharaoh and their society? We see that God is right and just with the first workers. What was it that got the first workers to be jealous or wanting more? Perhaps many of us already try to be simply grateful for what we have. We put our heads down and do our part and possibly do the best that we can within the relationships we have. But what if putting our heads down and doing the best that we can just isn't good enough anymore? Can we take the story further and befriend all those seeking a just and right wage? Can we expand our relationships to include people who appear to be in competition with us? I want to leave you with this exercise. If we are made in the image and likeness of God, then how would St. Paul's look differently if our community acted with God's justice? Are there relationships our community wants to make right since the sin of the past has distorted them? Are there leaders we want to work with that have the trust of those enslaved, incarcerated, oppressed among us? Are there families needing to be found and offered a second or a third or a fourth chance to earn a just living? How would we organize ourselves differently to act as God's image and action of justice? Let us walk together to imagine, to cultivate that community. After all, the next generation demands this of us.